Specializing in fast-paced storytelling and observational humor, and being loud, Dane Cook can often be seen moving all over the stage, as he uses his entire body to tell a joke. He also used social media to promote himself before that was even a thing. Mr. Cook comes off like your energetic roommate ranting in the living room after a few too many brewskis. Kind of a beautiful thing to watch. Like it or not, he was exactly what the world of comedy needed at that time. Dane Cook's comedic stylings were soon embraced by millions, allowing him to fill up stadiums with laughing frat boys and comedy connoisseurs alike. He stole the hearts of many young people, and stole the jokes of many funny people. Or, just happened to have the same funny thought. The dude became more of a rock star than a stand-up comedian. But as time has gone on, it seems like many people have left this comedian in the dust, with a few underperforming movies to his name and a comedy career that seems to have fallen off a bit. It's time we look at just what the f*** happened to Dane Cook.
Ah, what's up, Sufi? Boo! MySpace!
Is he saying something funny?
I don't know, but he's moving around a lot, so I guess.
Haha, he was on the internet and I'm in college. Haha!
But to truly understand what the f*** happened to Dane Cook, we must begin at the beginning of the beginning began when he was born on his birthday, 1972, around Boston. He would catch the comedy bug while in high school and would begin performing stand-up in 1990, while also studying graphic design in college, a skill that would come in handy for his later success. By 1992, Dane Cook had begun to make headway in the world of stand-up, and would be invited to perform at the renowned Boston Garden as a part of a concert that featured the Spin Doctors and Fish. But the music-hungry audience was not in the mood for comedy, and threw their shoes at poor Dane Cook, forcing him to exit the stage. But that is the life of a comedian. One night you bomb harder than you've ever bombed, sometimes you even sustain injuries, from rogue shoes flying at you. But you don't give up if you truly love comedy, and it seems like Dane Cook did, because he didn't give up. For Dane Cook, he would pick up and move to New York City in 1994, where he would perform nightly before moving to Los Angeles. As everybody knows, stand-up comedy is not a sprint, it's a marathon. It can take someone years, even decades, to see even the littlest bit of success. And it's really hard if you're not funny. But luckily for Dane Cook, he is. But yeah, despite landing roles on shows such as the short-lived series Maybe This Time, and the Rene Russo movie Buddy, and a guest spot on the Brooke Shields show Suddenly Susan, Cook was still struggling to find success in the comedy world. However, after making his television debut on David Letterman in 1997, Dane Cook would be featured on the hit Comedy Central stand-up showcase Premium Blend, where his act was a standout and would result in him landing his own half-hour special on the Comedy Central Presents show. In 2002, Dane Cook would take a hefty chunk of change and create his own website, DaneCook.com, as a way to get his comedy out directly to the peoples that couldn't see him live. A comedian making a website? What? At the time, it was unheard of. He totally embraced this newfangled internet thing. And so yeah, on August 1st, 2003, everybody's first digital friend Tom created a social networking website known as MySpace. And this site would allow you to personalize your own homepage. Dane Cook would create his MySpace page and link it directly to his website. It was truly a groundbreaking move, and it would not take long before Dane Cook amassed over 1.5 million friends on this social network, essentially becoming like the world's first influencer, I guess? But yeah, what Dane Cook did with this newfangled technology was use it to directly speak to his fans, comedically connect with them on a personal level. sometimes too personal. He would reply to upwards of 25,000 people a night, messaging them by name. Like I said, the dude knew how to connect with his fans. At the time, to some, this method of achieving fame was considered cheating. Dane Cook's use of social media was something that many comedians would criticize him for, and now all of these comedians use social network, which is actually kind of Dane Cook's ultimate funniest joke, is that now every comedian is Dane Cook. Ha ha ha.
Today I'm sitting down with comedian and actor Dane Cook, who started it all with this, with the social media.
I invented the internet.
You invented the internet.
Me and Al Gore.
With his popularity at a fever pitch, Dane Cook would release his first album, titled Harmful If Swallowed, which would go on to be certified platinum, even after he released it onto pirating sites like Napster. To Dane Cook, the money was secondary to the actual success. He just wanted people to hear his material. His success on the internet would see him start to sell out college campuses nationwide, while his graphic design background helped him create his iconic two-finger logo, sometimes known as the Super Finger. 2 years later, he would release Retaliation, which became the first comedy album since 1978's Wild and Crazy Guy by Steve Martin to reach the top 5 on the Billboard 200, before being certified double platinum, and also creating the term Karen, which is used to describe a complicated woman. Yeah, that's right, Dane Cook created the term Karen. He would start bringing camera crews with him on tour, so he could post videos on his MySpace page. And this would result in HBO giving him his own special, followed by the miniseries Tourgasm, while his shows would go from selling 3,000 tickets to filling up 12,000-seat arenas. And he became only the second comedian in history to sell out Madison Square Garden twice. The first being Andrew Dice Clay. This resulted in the album Dane Cook, Rough Around the Edges.
Oh my god. I don't believe this. Where am I?
But yet, mainstream media shunned him. He says that despite his success, no major publication would ever give him any press, until the press they did give him was only about how much they hated him and couldn't stand how he became so successful. But his success was undeniable, and he would soon land 2 spots on the VMAs, he would host SNL twice, and he would host the Teen Choice Awards, while also appearing on various talk shows, where his enthusiasm was infectious, while also feeling a bit forced. But you know what, I think the major appeal of Dane Cook is that he seems to be having fun. And you know what, it's fun to watch fun. Dane Cook would take his fame on the stage and turn it into a decent movie career. Of course, many of us may remember him as the waffler person guy in a brief scene in the 1999 movie Mystery Men. A scene that was so popular that Smash Mouth used it in their music video for All-Star. He would also appear in that Dennis Rodman movie Simon Says, which has 0% on those tomatoes that are rotten.com, and would bomb at the box office. And he was a prank caller on the hit Comedy Central series Crank Yankers. And he also had roles in such films as Stuck on You, Windy City Heat, Mr. 3000. Even though you don't actually see him, he is inside the sausage mascot. There's also that movie called Torque. In 2005, Dane Cook would land a more substantial role in a hilarious and cautionary tale called Waiting... where he would play a line cook who adds a little bit of zest to your dish if you're rude. So don't be rude, and don't go to a restaurant where Dane Cook is cooking. After appearing opposite Amber Heard in the film London, Dane Cook would finally land his first starring role in a mainstream comedy film, starring opposite Jessica Simpson, who was really big at the time, in 2006's Employee of the Month, which made a respectable $38.4 million off a $12 million budget, and serves as one of those early 2000 comedies that's actually kinda good. Not great, but you know, it is what it is. It does what it does. Funny. The success of the film Employee of the Month, mixed with his massive popularity in stand-up, would see 2006 and 2007 turn into the biggest years for Dane Cook, with 4 films released, including voicing a penguin in Farce of the Penguins, directed by Bob Saget, while headlining the comedy Good Luck Chuck opposite Jessica Alba, which was another box office hit, pulling in $60 million off a $25 million budget. Of course, critics were no fans of these Dane Cook movies, as he and Jessica Alba would be nominated for Worst On-Screen Couple at the Razzies. But Dane Cook would start to branch out and appear opposite Academy Award winners Kevin Costner and William Hurt in a very underrated movie called Mr. Brooks. Of course, everybody else in the cast got most of the praise, but Dane Cook does give a solid performance, breaking away from his comedic roots as a wannabe serial killer, which is actually kind of funny to see Dane Cook want to be a serial killer. He would end 2007 by appearing in the dramedy Dan in Real Life, playing Steve Carell's brother, where he would again get to show some range as an actor. But then things started to go off the rails when he was accused of the worst thing a stand-up comedian can be accused of: stealing jokes. Most notably, he would seem to spit out similar bits to Louis C.K. about naming your child and an itchy posterior region, and witnessing a car crash. Some of those jokes, such as the naming your child bit, can actually be traced back to a bit by Steve Martin from the 70s. Other comedians, such as Dimitri Martin and Joe Rogan, have also had bits allegedly stolen by Dane Cook. For his part, Dane Cook has maintained that he never stole any bits from anybody, while many fans point out that his bits are so general that it is very well possible that each of these individual funny people thought of the same premise on their own before performing it on stage, which I think is more likely. Oops, more than one comedian thought of the same thing. I'm sure it happens all the time. So if anything, Dane Cook is more guilty of being unoriginal than stealing jokes. Dane Cook would even appear in an episode of Louie, where he and Louis C.K. discuss the joke stealing. Although it is a piece of scripted material, you can see the real toll the accusations took on Dane Cook. But an even bigger toll taken on Dane Cook would be within his own family, discovering that his half-brother, who was working for him, was stealing millions behind his back. It broke Dane's heart, but he pressed charges against his brother, which resulted in prison time for that thieving family member. Dane Cook would take some time off from public life, with only the already filmed My Best Friend's Girl released in 2008, to horrible reviews. He would reappear in 2009 and release a new stand-up special titled Isolated Incident, where the venue was much smaller, more intimate than his previous stadium settings, with many people noticing a much more darker edge to his material. He was just triggering everybody on the internet. Since his heyday in the early to mid-2000s, Dane Cook has seemed to fade into the background. Every so often you see him pop up on TV shows like Hawaii Five-0 or Comedy Bang Bang or American Gods, and he had a hilarious turn as the boss on Workaholics, while still appearing in films like Detention, Guns, Girls, and Gambling, 400 Days, Planes, and Planes, Fire, and Rescue. Dane Cook would also lend his voice to the second highest grossing video game ever made, Grand Theft Auto V, while he would also star in the NBC series Next Caller, which unfortunately never got picked up to go to series. Oh no. He also tried again to go against brand and starred in a thriller called American Exit, but since then Dane Cook has maintained a fairly quiet lifestyle, popping up on podcasts and stuff like that, because, you know, there's plenty of podcasts to pop up on now, because everybody has a podcast now, which can kind of be all thanks to Dane Cook. It cannot be denied that the guy is a pioneer of how an entertainer and artist promotes themselves in today's social media-driven world.
I get more excited that I now get to be a mirror for some other people that sometimes want to come to me and get my 2 cents, almost like being a mentor to other people.
Then in September of 2023, he would marry his fiancée, Kelsey Taylor. And of course, that isn't without its own controversy, as Taylor is 26 years younger than Dane Cook. And they have been together since she was just 18 years old. Which, you know, is legal but oh so scandalous. And this brought back rumors of quote-unquote game nights, which allegedly involved Mr. Dane Cook and some very, very, very young women, girls. So yeah, because of those rumors and because he, you know, dated an 18-year-old, many people on the internet have taken to calling Mr. Dane Cook a groomer. And you know what? He kind of used his comedy powers and has taken this controversial stuff in stride and joked about it. Like, actually, one of the funniest moments of his most recent special, 2022's Above It All, is him making jokes about having a very young wife. So yeah, they tried to cancel him, but it didn't really stick.
And I said, where have you been all my life? And then I remembered she wasn't alive for the first 26 years of it.
And that's where we find Dane Cook today, still bringing his unique brand of comedy to his fans who have stuck with him over the past 20 years, while enjoying what appears to be a much more quiet lifestyle than he once lived. And even though he's living a quiet lifestyle, he's still screaming into a microphone! And that equals funny. Sure, his big screen career never truly took off, but his passion for stand-up comedy has always been there, which, you know, is still something he is doing to this very day. So, yeah, I guess nobody should really give a fuck about what the fuck happened to Dane Cook, because I guess he's doing fine.